The creaking house. The house stood alone, a stark silhouette against the twilight sky. It was an old, imposing structure with a weathered facade and a sense of foreboding that seemed to hang heavy in the air. Sarah, a young woman with a penchant for the macabre, had volunteered to house-sit for her elderly aunt while she was away on vacation. As she stepped inside, a chill ran down her spine. The interior was dimly lit, and the furnishings were antique and dusty. Cobwebs dangled from the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath her feet. A cold draft seemed to follow her everywhere, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. That night, as she lay awake in bed, she heard strange noises coming from the attic. A scratching sound, followed by a faint whisper. She hesitated to investigate, but her curiosity got the better of her. With a trembling hand, she reached for the flashlight and climbed the narrow, winding staircase. The attic was dark and filled with cobwebs. Dust motes danced in the beam of the flashlight, revealing a cluttered space filled with old trunks, boxes, and forgotten belongings. Sarah moved slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She had a feeling that whatever was making the noises was nearby. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the wall. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. The shadow seemed to be growing larger, taking on a human shape. Fear gripped her as she realized that she was not alone in the attic. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the shadow grow larger. It seemed to be moving towards her, its shape becoming more defined. Panic surged through her as she realized that whatever was behind the shadow was coming closer. She turned to run, but it was too late. A cold hand touched her shoulder, sending a shiver down her spine. She whirled around, her flashlight beam catching the figure in the darkness. It was a tall, gaunt man with sunken eyes and a sickly pallor. His face was obscured by a long, flowing cloak, but Sarah could feel his intense gaze boring into her. The man spoke in a voice that was both chilling and familiar. "You should have left when you had the chance," he said. "Now you must pay the price." Before Sarah could react, the man grabbed her and pulled her towards the edge of the attic. She struggled desperately, but his grip was like iron. The world seemed to tilt as she felt herself being pulled over the edge. She screamed, her voice echoing through the house. Then, everything went black. When Sarah regained consciousness, she found herself lying on the cold, hard floor of the attic. She was disoriented and confused, her head throbbing. She tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through her body. She realized that she was injured. With great effort, Sarah managed to crawl to the edge of the attic and look down. To her horror, she saw that she was several stories above the ground. There was no way she could climb back up. Panic set in as she realized that she was trapped. The man from the attic had tried to kill her, and now she was at his mercy. She was alone, scared, and injured. She didn't know if she would survive the night. As darkness enveloped the attic, Sarah huddled in a corner, shivering from the cold. She tried to ignore the pain in her body and focus on staying alive. She knew that she had to find a way to escape before the man returned. The night seemed to drag on endlessly. Sarah's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. She remembered the old trunk that she had seen in the attic. Perhaps there was something inside that could help her. With renewed determination, Sarah crawled towards the trunk. She fumbled with the latches, her fingers trembling. Finally, the lid swung open, revealing a collection of old, yellowed papers. She pulled one out at random and began to read. The paper was a letter, written in a faded script. It was addressed to Sarah's aunt, and it contained a shocking revelation. The house had a dark history, and the man who had attacked Sarah was not a mere intruder. He was the ghost of a former owner, a cruel and vengeful man who had been driven mad by a terrible secret. The secret was buried deep within the house, a hidden treasure that the man had guarded with his life. It was believed that anyone who discovered the secret would be cursed, doomed to wander the house forever as a restless spirit. Sarah's heart pounded as she read the letter. She now understood why the man had tried to kill her. She had stumbled upon his secret, and he wanted to silence her before she could reveal it to the world. With a newfound sense of purpose, Sarah climbed to her feet. She knew that she had to find the secret and put the ghost to rest. She had to escape the house and warn her aunt about the danger. Sarah began to search the attic, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. She examined every nook and cranny, looking for any clues that might lead her to the hidden treasure. As she searched, she heard a faint sound coming from the attic window. It was the sound of someone trying to open it. Sarah's heart raced. She knew that the ghost was back, and he was coming for her. Sarah's blood ran cold as she heard the attic window creak open. She knew that the ghost was about to enter the room. She scrambled towards the trunk, hoping to hide inside, but it was too late. The figure of the ghost appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight. He was tall and gaunt, his eyes glowing with a sinister light. Sarah backed away, her fear turning into anger. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, her voice trembling. "You're just a ghost, a shadow of your former self." The ghost laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the attic. "You underestimate me, little girl," he said. "I am more powerful than you can imagine." With a swift movement, the ghost lunged at Sarah. She dodged, but he was too quick. He grabbed her by the arm and threw her to the ground. Sarah struggled to get up, but the ghost was on her, his cold hands pinning her down. She could feel his breath on her face, a foul, musty smell that made her want to gag. Just as the ghost was about to strike, Sarah heard a noise coming from downstairs. It was the sound of someone breaking into the house. The ghost froze, his eyes widening in surprise. He released Sarah and turned towards the attic window. With a look of pure hatred, he vanished into the night. Sarah was left alone, trembling and exhausted. She managed to pull herself to her feet and limp towards the attic window. She looked down and saw that the intruder had entered the house through the front door. Sarah knew that she had to warn her aunt. She climbed out of the attic window and made her way downstairs. The intruder was in the living room, rummaging through the drawers. Sarah confronted the intruder, her voice filled with anger. "Who are you and what do you want?" she demanded. The intruder turned, his face illuminated by the light from the window. It was a man she had never seen before, a stranger with a determined look in his eyes. "I'm here for the treasure," he said, "the secret that the ghost has been guarding." Sarah's eyes widened. She knew that the stranger was referring to the same secret that the ghost had been protecting. She realized that the ghost had been trying to keep the treasure safe, and now that he was gone, the stranger was free to take it. Sarah knew that she had to stop the stranger. She had to protect the house and the secret that it held. With a newfound determination, she lunged at the intruder, tackling him to the ground. Sarah and the intruder struggled on the floor, their bodies twisting and turning. Sarah fought with all her might, her anger fueling her strength. She knew that she had to stop the stranger before he could find the secret. The intruder was a powerful man, and Sarah was starting to tire. She could feel her strength fading, and she knew that she wouldn't be able to hold him off much longer. Just as it seemed that the intruder was about to overpower Sarah, she heard a noise coming from upstairs. It was the sound of someone running down the stairs. Sarah looked up and saw her aunt standing at the top of the staircase, her face pale with fear. "Sarah, are you all right?" she called out. The intruder saw Sarah's aunt and knew that he was outnumbered. He scrambled to his feet and ran towards the front door. Sarah tried to stop him, but he was too quick. He burst through the door and disappeared into the night. Sarah and her aunt rushed to the front door and looked out. The intruder was nowhere to be seen. He had escaped with the secret. Sarah felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. She had fought so hard to protect the house and the secret, but in the end, she had failed. She turned to her aunt, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Aunt," she said. "I couldn't stop him." Her aunt placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "It's not your fault, dear," she said. "The secret was too powerful for anyone to control." Sarah nodded, her heart heavy. She knew that her aunt was right. The secret had been a curse, a dark force that had haunted the house for generations. Now that it was gone, perhaps the house could finally be at peace. As the sun began to rise, Sarah and her aunt sat on the porch, watching the first rays of light bathe the house in a warm glow. The house that had once seemed so sinister now appeared peaceful and serene. Sarah knew that she would never forget her experience in the old house. The fear, the danger, and the mystery had all shaped her in ways that she could never have imagined. But she was also grateful for the courage and resilience that she had discovered within herself. As she looked out at the rising sun, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. The secret was gone, and the house was safe. She knew that she would always remember the old house and the strange events that had taken place within its walls. But she also knew that she would never be afraid of it again.